Silverberg, Director of the Center for Nonprofit Studies at Austin Community College, and welcome to Civil Society, where we explore issues affecting our communal well-being through a nonprofit lens. We're a proud partner of ACC TV, but given COVID-19, we continue to operate virtually for our third season. My guest today is Maggie Miller, co-author of Magnify Your Impact, Powering Profit with Purpose. She and her colleague, Hannah Noakes, have produced an elegant and inspirational book that guides the reader in aligning resources and talents with the business's core purposes, and thereby the organization's value to everyone involved. Written for for-profit entities, Magnify Your Impact offers an equally useful blueprint for our nonprofit arena. Its focus on meaning and purpose is essential for nonprofit mission success. Even with my over 40 years of experience as a nonprofit leader and manager, I found myself taking notes and generating new ideas about how I could be even more effective. The book reads like a conversation between the authors and the reader. We'll talk about the book, but first let's focus on our guest, Maggie Miller. A graduate of our center's 2009 Certificate in Nonprofit Leadership and Management, Maggie has a wealth of experience in what she writes about. She's developed social impact solutions alongside hundreds of companies. Among her achievements, Maggie founded an international microcredit nonprofit in rural Peru, serving indigenous women. As she writes in this book, and I quote, "Seeing women who lived on $1 a day, realizing their potential and supporting their families was a powerful lesson in how prosperity is born through opportunity." Through this work, Maggie writes, and again I quote, "I had unearthed my mission to inspire greatness in others to unleash their potential." Maggie and her business partner, Hannah Noakes, combined their consultancies to spur corporate leaders to fuse their profit with their purpose. To quote the eminently quotable Maggie Miller, "Once I know their purpose, I'm honored to help them unleash their potential for greatness." So I'm honored to be chatting with you, Maggie. And while your business card reads Chief Troublemaker, I think you need to change it to read Chief Good Troublemaker. So I love the book, and thanks for sharing it before publication. So how does it feel to have completed the book, and now others are going to know what's in your mind? And in the course of responding, why don't you tell us how people can get the book?
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you for having me, Barry. You know, I love being in presence with you. I just want to say thank you for the thousands of people you've mentored in Austin and Texas and nationally in the social sector. You're an amazing person, and I just feel grateful to be in your presence today.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I know you like a little brown nosing. So so thank you for talking about the book. The book was a journey. I think writing a book is a journey. The text changes many times, many iterations along the way, but so do you. You change as the author, as the person, as it comes to this place of fruition and birthing. You're sort of in a space where you know it's going to be shared with the world, and you know you're standing by what you say. And so it takes a lot of focus, determination, organization. I'd love to give kudos to my business partner, Hannah, who is the greatest red pen editor of all time. And, you know, we're just really excited for this to get in the hands of business leaders and leaders as well, so that they can start thinking about legacy and purpose inside their business and how they want to bring this to life. And we feel like we've done a good job of trying to guide them. So your question to how you can get it, it's on pre-order right now. It releases on September 21st. You can order it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, or your favorite local bookstore. Magnify Your Purpose, Powering Profit with Purpose, and it'll come right up.
Great. So why don't you talk a little bit about Maggie Miller? Why,
right.
I think I know why, but for our viewers, why do you do what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So I kind of like to say I have 4 pillars that I'll describe to myself. I not necessarily in order, but I'll try to put them in order here. Family, faith, fulfillment, and football being the Spanish word for soccer. So when I say that, I mean soccer. So family, of course, being a total cornerstone for me. I'm one of 8 kids from the Midwest. Grew up 7th of 8. We are 8 M names: Mark, Monica, Mike, Mary, Mindy, Marty, Maggie, Marcy, Miller. And just growing up in that atmosphere of, 8 siblings in one bathroom getting ready for school really formed who I was and who I've become. So I'm an aunt times 28. I'm the spoiler aunt. I love to send presents and do rebellious, fun, troublemaking things with my nieces and nephews, and also usher and guide them into adulthood. So that's family. Faith for me is important. I have a relationship with something that's greater than myself. The name for me isn't important. We can call it all, God, universe, energy, spirit. But that really guides my sort of daily wake up and my call to the fulfillment piece of my pillar, which is that I want to wake up and be excited and passionate about how I can inspire greatness in myself and other people. And so to do that, I feel like I need to get centered and sort of give something to something greater than myself as just an egoic human. And then the last one, football and or soccer. I'll just use soccer from here on out. Soccer for me I played college soccer. 4 of us in my family had full rides to school. It's just been a big part of my upbringing and taught me really to pour into people through sport. And I feel it's a real global language. It's one of the most internationally spoken games. And so I love seeing games around the world. It's one of my greatest passions, and I feel like it's a great teacher as well.
Well, just struck me that your family, your siblings are the 7 M&Ms.
We're the 8 M&Ms. Yep, including
M&Ms.
me.
Okay,
8 M&Ms. We are
8
the 8
M&Ms.
M&Ms for sure.
I hate to cut out a sibling. I apologize.
Yeah, you could be cutting me out. Yeah.
No, I would never do that. So since your book is about social impact, tell us what you mean by what you and Hannah mean by social impact.
Absolutely. So I think just clarifying some of these terms here for our conversation is a good idea. So social impact for us in the book are the positive effects that a business has on its stakeholders. So the positive effects, how it's giving its time, talent, and treasure, volunteerism, philanthropy, its service of its talents towards cause areas. So social impact is the positive effects.
Mhm.
When we talk about positive effects it has on its stakeholders means anyone who is influenced or affecting a business. And so when we talk about stakeholders, we can mean employees, we can mean customers or consumers, supply chains, the industry that an organization is sitting in, certainly the communities that they're operating in and how they treat those communities. So that body of stakeholders is very important to the book and to the terminology of the book. Just to make a note, because we're going to use the term corporate social responsibility or corporate responsibility in our conversation. Corporate social responsibility, also called corporate responsibility, sometimes just shortened to CSR. So I'll just say CSR here today. CSR is that entire footprint that a business has on the world, both its positive and negative effects. So you'll see companies really public companies especially having to mitigate the effects of, their what they do to the environment or how they're working inside supply chains, and to make sure that there are no negative effects. So corporate responsibility is the bigger snapshot of positive and negative, and social impact is the positive effect piece.
Well, since you raise corporate responsibility, in your book, you talk about the 4 eras, pardon me, of corporate responsibility. Can you just chat about that for a second?
Sure,
how
sure.
The concept has evolved.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me just kind of take a cursory view over these 4 eras we go through in the book. I wanted to just read a real short quote that's in that area of the book because I love it so much. It's by Rebecca Henderson. She's Harvard Business Review. And she says, this is about corporate responsibility. She says, we're witnessing a transformational moment akin to the transfer of analog to digital. So this big transformational moment. And people are beginning to realize that paying attention to the perceptions of their company and the social consequences of their company is good business. So it's good business to begin paying attention to those things. And that's sort of where corporate responsibility has come to, this proactive player. But let me kind of just take you through the four. So the first one is corporate philanthropy. Corporate philanthropy has been around for hundreds of years, even before that. This is the giving of your treasure and time to support charitable causes and community causes. So this is a necessary thing. It will always be part of a corporate responsibility plan. Giving your treasure, your funds, your money for someone to affect the community is a necessary thing. It helps through disaster. It really is a lifesaver, quite literally. This, though, is we call buyer mentality. So buyer mentality is where a corporation or a business buys, in effect, the opportunity for a nonprofit to do what they do really well, to create change or to solve social ills or social needs. So that's the corporate philanthropy piece. That's the first era. The second era is this rise of social contract, or impact as a social contract. And what we mean by this is this comes from 1953. Howard Bowen terms corporate social responsibility, or CSR. He actually creates the term and becomes known as the grandfather of CSR, in effect. And he basically says that being a company requires public consent. So you can't, in effect, exist if the public doesn't accept you or buy your things or like you. In general, if the public doesn't take part in your company, you don't exist. And so therefore, business has this obligation, or this social contract, to give back, to serve the issues of the society or the world. And you'll see in this era that there's a lot of codifying of corporate responsibility. This is where, the Consumer Product Safety was born, and the Environmental Protection Agency. A lot of those agencies were born during this era, this time. And then moving into the third era, we begin talking about corporate reputation. And so this kind of starts in the 1990s, when globalization is ever more present within companies. And we're now shining our light on the responsibility that companies must have on their supply chains, especially when you're dealing with companies with weaker societal protections. So this all becomes about how companies' actions can affect their brand and their reputation. And so companies start thinking much about corporate citizenship and their corporate citizenship brand and what it means to be a good corporate citizen. And then we move into the final era, which is this era of shared value, which I know we will talk about a little bit more today. But this is the era in the early 2000s where Kofi Annan creates the UN Sustainable Development Goals, and the Sustainable Development Goals essentially being like an ongoing standard for how companies can come together and solve the world's greatest challenges. And those evolved over the 2000s. There's currently 17 of them. There's a 17 UN Sustainable Development Goals for 2030. So they keep evolving and changing and kind of refining over time. But that really that really gave rise to, in 2006, we see Michael Kramer and Porter, they're Harvard professors, and they bring up this concept of shared value. And shared value really means that business that's meaningful to society is also meaningful to business. So you can, let me clarify, you can have competitive advantage, you can make money, but you can also serve the needs of the community at the same time. And so in effect, profit and purpose can be aligned, they can coexist. And so what that really has done is create this new era where corporations must be proactive in how they're aligning profit and purpose. It's no longer this reactive, like, I don't want to, somebody told me I can't, destroy the world, so I have to apply by the rules. I have to watch my reputation. It's more, how can I set forth to create to use my own treasures of my company and my own superpowers, which we'll talk about in a second, to make a difference. And so we're in this area of shared value right now. And it's really, all these eras are really important because they've changed as businesses' role in society has changed, and they're all important in framing how a company looks at their strategy.
Well, let's pick up on Kramer and Porter, as they talked about, and you quote in your book, a new frontier for competitive positioning. And they talked, or later in the book, or maybe I don't remember exactly when, you started talking about millennials and Gen Z, the folks that are going to put me in a nursing home. So why don't you talk about this whole question of deepening consumer commitment, and how this benefits the corporation or the business, in addition to helping society. But the motivation clearly is the business and the purpose of moving forward. So let me talk about that. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. So, to the Porter and Kramer, this, again, the concept of shared value, meaning that making money and doing good at the same time can coexist. And that the alignment of profit and purpose, for us, we describe it like an electrical current, that they can indeed feed off one another and make each part of the business better. You're deepening relationships with your stakeholders, you're sparking your culture. And now I'll dive into the whole notion of young business culture. So we have this situation today where we have a completely interconnected and interdependent world, and the rise of social technology rules everything. And what that does is it gives consumers and employees and people in general unprecedented voice. Someone can glorify you or they can rip you in a second, and so companies have to pay attention to social technology and the unprecedented voice of consumers. And now employees, let's look at millennials. So millennials are that group of like 25 to 40-year-olds right now. They're going to be 75% of the workforce in the next 2 years. So once upon a time, we were like, oh, this young generation, they're kind of coming in, they act differently, they want different things. But it's here now. They're 75% of the workforce almost. And right behind them are the Gen Z, as we call them. Those are, those young 20-somethings entering, they're about up to 24, 25 entering the workforce. And they're also 40% of the consumer marketplace. So they're young buyers, and they buy largely through social media as well. And so we'll see time and time again, Deloitte Millennial surveys are wonderful surveys over and over again through the last 10 years. They take big numbers of millennials. It's not just like a group of 500 or 1,000, like global group of millennials, and look for trends. And we see that always these groups at like the 88% think that business should have a role in solving the issues of the world, and 86% saying that business should exist for more than profit. And so their orientation about wanting to work somewhere that is purposeful and has value and has fulfillment and meaning is very important to these generations. So it's something to pay attention to.
Cool. So the book is written for business folk. Mm-hmm. And our audience is clearly in a lot of your experiences in the nonprofit arena.
Absolutely.
Yet when I read it, I could have taken the word business out of there and just put it nonprofit. It's in terms of the meaning and purpose. Talk a little bit about the importance of being clear about purpose and how that relates to the whole question of aligning assets and resources, and then ending up with success.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a really important area in the book for nonprofit leaders. one of the most fundamental partnerships for a business is to find community partners, nonprofit partners that will be able to enact the change that they wish to see in the world, the cause areas that they want to affect. Businesses are they're in the area of, they want to make profit. They're dealing with their own business strategy. So they need to find great partnerships to enact these changes. So inevitably, every business is looking for this fundamental partnership with a nonprofit, because they are the trusted partners. They are the experts, the business experts in that cause area of what they're doing, right? So on our stakeholder wheel, every business leader, when they're developing their impact strategy, they in effect are always going to think of community partnerships. So there's an area in the book where we walk business leaders through how to really meaningfully create and date, in essence, nonprofit partners. So what we ask businesses to do is really create criteria for selection with nonprofit partners. What is important to them as an organization, as a business? What do they need to get out of these partnerships? For some people, it's they want to go deep into a problem, or they want to invite major business partners into solving a social issue, or they might need some brand reputation fix, or they want to spark hundreds of employees at events together. So those selection for criteria are a little bit different and stacked a little bit differently for each business. And I think it's really important for a nonprofit to be aware of, when they're coming to a business for partnership, instead of just kind of asking for the contribution or the money, the corporate philanthropy, to think of this shared value aspect and to say, how can I help them solve the impact pillar area, the area of their focus? Like, okay, they're clearly disaster response and child welfare and veteran prosperity. Oh, I serve one of those areas. I'm going to go to that business and say, we're really aligned on your impact pillar area. And I'd love to talk about what your criteria for selection are. And I want to talk about how we can measure together. Because as companies mature along their way, they really want to measure what matters. At first, we're talking just about outputs and numbers, like we served 100 children or we served 8,000 veterans. But after a while, they want to see the meaningful change grow. And so I think nonprofits can really do a proactive job of approaching businesses this way. And we have a series of interview questions in the book towards the end that's for businesses to talk to nonprofits. And I think nonprofits should take those and reverse engineer them. And I think that you can be wildly successful in proactively approaching business leaders that way.
Excellent. So what if there's a Clip Note version of your book?
Yeah.
Okay. If one of those companies that reduce your book to 2-minute reading, okay.
Yeah.
What are the 2 most significant learnings that you think the reader ought to take away?
Yeah. So if I could just for a second talk about the corporate responsibility blueprint, and then I'll give you like the 2 big takeaways.
Sure.
So the book essentially is a social impact blueprint. It's a social impact blueprint for business leaders. It is a map. It is a plan for you. And it takes you through these 4 areas of how to build the blueprint for your business. Mm-hmm. So quickly, the 4 areas, the first one is establishing your core ideology, talking about your purpose and your values. What's the legacy for the company 100 years from now, much above and beyond yourself as one human or these humans in this place and time? The values being that code of ethics and behaviors that the company wants to live by and hire, fire, and walk and talk by. So that's the core ideology piece. And then we go into this area called uncover your superpowers. We use the word superpowers a lot. It's what are your unique capabilities of your company, your services, products, expertise, experiences that you can bring to making a difference. So we're like, our attitude in the book is don't try to, there's a quote that's called don't have a pop gun approach and try to do everything under the sun. Take your superpowers and really hone in on the impact pillars that make a difference for you. Impact pillars, meaning the areas of focus for your company and the causes that you want to affect. I named a couple, for example, child welfare, veteran prosperity, you could reading and education, just examples, and those can be honed in as much as needed, obviously. And then the last one is identifying and prioritizing your stakeholders. So your stakeholder wheel for a company is super critical. Everybody, based on their company growth plan and their company issues, like what they're working through, has to prioritize their stakeholders differently. For some, it may be their supply chain is really important to getting things done. For some, it may be how they sit inside the industry. If you're a global corporation, obviously you have different operating communities to consider on your stakeholder chain. And then obviously at the top of that are your employees, your team, and the consumers or customers that you're addressing. So that's the blueprint. It walks through these four areas. And I think that the two main things we'd like people to take away are, number one, that profit and purpose can coexist. That you can define your business success by including profit and purpose, that you can have this competitive advantage and that you can create meaningful change in these communities at the same time. So profit and purpose coexist. And number two, that you're not alone on the journey. So how to really catalyze and spark your stakeholder wheel to make things happen. When you invite these folks along on this journey, you're already having business conversations. Now you're integrating these impact conversations and you get these raving loyal fans out of it. And so we want people to really know that they're not alone in that journey.
Fantastic. It's a fantastic book. I really,
thank you.
I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Thank you, Barry.
I took all kinds of notes.
That
really
means a lot coming from you. Thank you.
I appreciate that. So, believe it or not, we've talked for quite some time. It's gone really quick. So on a personal level, on a Maggie Miller level, okay, taking your assets and your purpose, notice the connection? No.
Yeah.
What lessons, what hard-earned wisdom would you pass along to somebody who, and I think there are a lot of people, and there are a lot of people who would see you as a role model?
Well, thank you. I mean, I hope I'm a role model to some folks. So I think the hard-earned lessons, the things that I've learned along the way. So get to know people and what they're passionate about. I think that in the United States, especially, our first parts of conversations are about what people do. And as you know, I live part-time in Spain as well. And so the orientation in different countries around the world isn't always just about what you do. It's about what you're passionate about. You get to know somebody and what they care about. And I found that brings a level of authenticity, like, hey, what matters to you? What's important to you? If that's aligned with your work, that's awesome. Then you really, really are succeeding there for yourself. But getting to know someone and what they're passionate about, I think, cultivates relationships in ways that are there for you for your whole life, both in business, personal, networking, and beyond. And I really think that's the best kept secret about doing business, is to cultivate real, authentic relationships. I think especially for women in business, like if I would look at a younger version of myself, just to not be so tough on myself, but to realize my value. I think that, you're always sort of you're always going to be a bit vulnerable. Every human is. And I think the advice there is, it's from one of my favorite New York best-selling authors, Bob Goff. He writes a book, Love Does. And it's about, doing love and life out loud. And he says, comparison is a punk. It's a landmine. And I think in this day and age, more than ever, that's what we see in front of us. We have social in front of us all the time. If you're on it, you're like, oh, somebody has this or doing that better, or I'm not succeeding, or I'm not doing this enough, or I don't have this. And I think that we really need to work through that and minimize that in our lives, because I think it can be really destructive. So that's really important, I think. And then make it happen was a saying my dad said to us growing up every day. I had him write it in his writing before he passed away a couple months ago. And I think that just making it happen, like taking steps, like taking baby steps, like the vision of what you want to create is really big sometimes. And it's big, hairy, audacious goals, right? And how do you get there? So to just take little pieces and what can you get done and who can you get to know that will help you just put one foot in front of the other. So make it happen is a big thing for me. And then authenticity, you know me a bit, Barry. Authenticity is everything. I'm not always going to, be the most proper person walking into the room. It's probably my chief troublemaker, ode to curiosity aspect of me. But here's who I am, and I'm going to do everything I can to be actively loving you in the conversation and getting to know you on a deeper level. So those are some words of advice I'd give.
Terrific. I remember when we first met in CNLM, in the Certificate of Nonprofit Leadership Management.
Yeah,
I honestly did not know what to make of you. Okay.
that's common.
But because I think you're someone who lives your values, and that's really important. And it's been a pleasure, and I'm really proud to see how you've moved forward and the impact you're having on the world. I think you're eloquent, passionate, and I urge our viewers to read the book because it's full of wisdom. So and Hannah did a great job. Fantastic.
Thank you. And thank you for the foundation that you give so many leaders in our community. I mean, I see a more scared younger version of myself in 2009 with the booklet of materials in class. And just honestly, it was one of the best foundational moments for me in making it happen and building a international nonprofit. I didn't know how to do it. And it was such an important part of my journey. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you. I still have the flute you brought home from Peru for me.
Oh, good. You should learn to play it.
No, that's hopeless.
All right. We'll like it. All right.
So thank you for watching. Thank you for the interview. Thank you to our viewers for watching and participating in civil society. And of course, thank you to Kate Tolliver, our managing producer, for all of her support. You can read more about Maggie Miller and find a link to purchase Maggie and Hannah Noakes' book, Magnify Your Impact, on our website, nonprofitaustin.org/civil society. And we'll have some additional resources about the topics that we've discussed. And you can watch previous and future episodes. Y'all have a great day. And again, thank you very much, Maggie, for both this interview, the work you've done, are doing, and you and Hannah for a phenomenal book.
Thank you, Barry. Thank you.
Thank you.
Goodbye to everyone.
Take care.
Get in touch. Bye.